will be muted during today's presentation, but we strongly encourage you to ask any questions in the question pane that's on the right side of your screen. We'll get to as many questions as possible before the end of the session. Today's webinar will also be recorded, and you will receive a copy of the recording within the next 24 hours. We should wrap up in about 45 minutes. Without further ado, I'll hand it over to today's moderator, Mark Hummel.
Hello, everybody, and thank you for joining us. My name is Mark Hummel, and I run our sales and strategy for VMS automation here at Bullhorn. I'm really excited today as I'm joined by several members of the Jacobson Group here in Chicago. Really looking forward to talking about today's subject, which is VMS Strategy Revealed, the science behind the process. So today, we're going to talk with some great experts in this space, and I'll tell you a little bit more about why they are the perfect people for us to have this conversation with. First, we'll start off with Jennifer Shore. So Jennifer Shore is the Assistant Vice President at Jacobson Group, where she leads the company's internal administrative and travel service functions. In her role, she also implements and oversees related policies and procedures. And Jennifer partners with internal leaders to act as a product manager, as a business analyst, and as an enterprise-wide technology implementer. Next, we have Beth Rokel. And Beth's actually pretty new to the team, as we'll hear in a little bit. But Beth's impressive resume as the Vice President of Talent Delivery here at the Jacobson Group is extensive background in talent solution space with experience in contingent labor operations and client delivery management. In her role as a Senior Vice President, Beth partners with the organization's sales and business leaders to execute high-value staffing services. She's also a member of Jacobson's executive management team with a significant role in growing the enterprise. And finally, last but not least, we have Catherine Preet. And Catherine is a Senior Vice President of Operations here at the Jacobson Group. She oversees strategic direction of corporate operations, legal, risk management, and technology for the entire organization. With over 22 years of staffing experience, it is her mission to help the organization learn, evolve, and continue to be a leader in the staffing best practices. Catherine also serves on the Jacobson Group's executive management team and plays an integral role in the growth and development of the firm. And so the reason that the Jacobson Group made the perfect panelists for this webinar is because we find them to be a great reflection of our overall client base as it relates to the VMS space. The Jacobson Group is a leading provider of talent in the insurance industry. For nearly 50 years, the Jacobson Group has been connecting organizations with insurance professionals at all levels across all industry verticals. This firm provides an array of services, including executive search, professional recruiting, temporary staffing, and subject matter experts. And so today, specifically, we're going to talk about the VMS portion of the Jacobson Group's business coming through their strategic accounts team. And as we look at why they make such a great panel for this discussion, some of the stats we have here on the board of their overall achievements since implementing a new VMS process in 2019, they've increased their customer portfolio by over 400%. They've increased their fill rate on orders coming through VMSs by 5 times. They've nearly tripled the headcount of the people working on those VMS relationships, and they've increased their participation rate in these programs to over 159%, meaning that they're submitting more than 1.5 people per job that the company receives. So from here, I want to start us off with some questions for this great panel. And our first question, just to kind of level set, as we talk about, there was a difference in the perception of how VMS jobs were viewed by the Jacobson Group prior to this transformation in 2019. So Catherine, could you give us a little bit of insight as to what the Jacobson Group's opinion of VMS was prior to this year?
Yes, Mark, thank you so much. So our organization's preference was really to focus on working in environments that allowed for high-touch consultative relationships with our clients. And this had been a very successful service group for us, so we were very confident in with that focus. And what else I would say is typically the VMS relationships didn't really allow for that consultative high touch at the customer level. So we typically would shy away from that style of interaction.
Yeah, I think that's something that we hear quite a bit from customers. As you mentioned, the process being a little bit more of a black hole, a little bit less high touch, and also obviously the margin pressures that you have within the MSP programs. So how would you say that perspective showed itself in the way that you guys worked these roles at the Jacobson Group?
Yeah, prior to 2019, we actively walked away from the VMS style business, and we did not seek out new opportunities in that space. The VMS job orders we received were prioritized as low, which really meant that we would not work on VMS jobs unless all of our direct jobs were filled. And as you might imagine, our direct jobs kept coming in, and there was such little focus in that VMS job space.
Yeah, absolutely. I think we've all certainly heard that if we don't have it as a priority, there's plenty of jobs on the board. So certainly that can push down those on your priority list. What would you guys say the catalyst for the change in your thought process of VMS was?
Yeah, this is where I personally think it gets interesting. We as a MSP and VMS solutions began to increase in our space at a very rapid rate, we came to realize that we were missing out on revenue. The scales were kind of tipping in our industry, and the VMS MSP world was gaining strength. So at that time, another colleague and I had decided to conduct a pilot program in which we focused on a very small subset of clients, which was 3 total, that we had an agreement with their MSP already. And what we chose to do is we designated a specific recruiting team that only worked on the VMS jobs. And we also made a concerted effort to shift any processes accordingly to help support that different style of business. And so during our pilot program, Beth was hired to lead all of our temporary staffing recruiting teams. So as we were proving concept in this pilot and deciding to formalize the VMS work, we were so very lucky to have Beth absorb that specialized recruiting team in with her other folks. And I would say the 2 biggest jumps in success with that VMS work were really heavily impacted by, 1, Beth's leadership and knowledge, and she'll get into that in just a minute, and 2, by using the Bullhorn Sync tool to automate the job data flow from the VMS into Bullhorn.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's another reason this conversation really makes sense, is that, to your point, this is both a process change for you guys and a technology adoption at the same time. And very excited that we have Beth on this call, because Beth, obviously your background really suited well, as Catherine just mentioned, to be a catalyst for this change. Can you give us some insight on what your background brings to this current role?
Sure. Prior to joining the Jacobson Group this year, I spent nearly 20 years in the outsourced solutions space, supporting both RPO and MSP business. And one of the things that I learned when I was on the other side of the table, so to speak, is the importance of building good relationships with the participating suppliers within the MSPs. I felt like when we had good relationships with suppliers, we had a successful MSP relationship for our customer. And so now that I've sort of flipped my focus, I focus with our team a lot about creating strong relationships with the MSP partners, the same way that we used to with hiring managers when we were working directly with hiring managers. And we talk about where's the value for the customer, where's the value for the MSP, where's the value for the hiring manager. And so by being able to kind of flip that focus, it's allowed our team to improve their success.
Amazing. Yeah, I think that can't be understated, right? Is that there's another layer of relationship here with the MSP. And so when you look at that relationship now, what would you say is the strategic importance of MSP jobs that are coming through VMS?
So I think the first thing is that MSPs continue to gain adoption. So a few years ago, it would be common to leverage an MSP if you were an employer, if your organization spent somewhere in the neighborhood of 25 million or more in contingent spend. But now we're seeing organizations with even as little as 5 million in spend that might look to outsource the management of their contingent labor program. In addition to that, some of these organizations with smaller spends might decide, rather than having decentralized procurement of their contingent labor, they want to centralize the procurement of their contingent labor and have an in-house MSP even. So in addition to seeing the increased adoption amongst our customers, we also think that we can provide value to the MSPs in a different way than a lot of staffing companies are doing today. And so we view this as a way to increase the breadth and depth of our customer relationships by being able to expand the types of services that we're providing to them.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's something, as we look at some of the panels that we've hosted in the past and some of the panels that we've had in Engage with other speakers from MSP markets, they echo that same sentiment that partnership with the suppliers is crucial. And so I think that, to your point, there's really a relationship that needs to happen with the MSP that's probably just as crucial as the relationship with the hiring manager. So I'm glad that you brought that up. And I think when we look at now back to the Jacobson Group's process, as you came on earlier this year, what were some of the immediate opportunities that you saw because you had worked in this space to change the way that the VMS requisitions were getting worked versus how they had in the past with Jacobson Group?
So as Catherine mentioned, we created a dedicated fulfillment team to work exclusively on the orders coming through the MSP relationships as part of the pilot. And having this dedicated team was so important because there's some real key differences between the way that you recruit for MSP orders versus the way that you recruit on orders that aren't coming through an MSP. One of the things that's really important in an MSP environment is the speed to submit. It's really important when you're competing against one or many other staffing agencies to be able to decrease the time to submit. So having the dedicated focus was really important there. As I mentioned earlier, we've been very focused on building strong relationships and finding ways to help our customers get wins. And one of the differentiators, I think, for the Jacobson Group is our historic focus in the insurance industry. By leveraging our knowledge of the insurance industry, we're able to add value to those MSPs that are operating within the insurance space. Sometimes we hear from our current customers who are moving to an MSP or have recently gone to an MSP that they're struggling with the institutional knowledge about their business. So we're able to add that knowledge, which I think is a differentiator for us. Additionally, I think that expertise in finding the purple squirrels allows us to extend that to other types of hard-to-fill areas as well. And then finally, we knew that because of the competitive nature of the MSP environment, we needed to leverage technology differently as compared with how we had been working in the past. So we've spent the past year looking at our processes, looking at our technologies, trying different things, and trying with the focus of automating administrative low-impact functions, which then frees up our team to spend their time in more impactful interactions with either candidates, the hiring managers, or the MSP program team.
Absolutely. I think that's some of the things that we are consistently saying with our partners throughout the staffing industry right now is you didn't hire these recruiters and these account managers to be data entry people. It's all about the relationship. So to that point, can you expound a little bit more on what the role that technology has had with your team's ability to execute on these new processes?
So I think we have to step back a little bit and understand what the role of an MSP is for its customers. And so one of the primary functions of an MSP, why an organization might decide to hire an MSP provider, is they want to deliver cost savings. They need to reduce their overall spend. There's some other functions as well, of course, of an MSP, but cost savings is a primary driver. So because of that, we knew we needed to automate some of the labor-intensive parts of the process so that we weren't spending a lot of money filling jobs where a technology could fulfill some of those functions. The other thing that really helps, where the technology really helps us, is that in an MSP environment, the volume is really key because the overall cost to the customer is lower per person. We need to be able to have more people working to be able to have it make business sense. And so the technology has really helped us here too. So we've leveraged Sync this year to quickly bring jobs from the different VMS tools into our Bullhorn environment, which helps us in a couple of ways. It eliminates the need to manually key the information into Bullhorn, which could reduce errors, as well as just get the job into Bullhorn faster. And then in the event that the job is waiting in someone's inbox and that person's in a meeting or at lunch, the rest of the team can start working on it right away. So that's helped us a lot from a speed to submit standpoint. We also recently helped to pilot the submittals product, where we're able to submit candidates directly from Bullhorn into the VMS tool without having to leave the environment. And the efficiency that we gained here is that the submittals tool allows our recruiters to stay in Bullhorn and not have to learn a number of VMS tools in order to submit candidates for consideration. And this allows us to grow our team more quickly because there's less training, as well as to be able to slot in resources from other groups when the volume dictates for just a short period of time.
Yeah, absolutely. I think you touched on a lot of great pieces there. I mean, one of the main pieces that I'd like to call attention to too is as you look at that VMS cost structure, the MSP cost structure, and how that relationship, to your point, is set up really to drive cost savings to the end buyer. As staffing firms, we really should be leveraging the same opportunity on the other side because we have all that capability to change our cost profile for how we fill these requisitions that come through vendor management systems. So it's a great call out, and I think to your point, the technology has weaved in perfectly with these new processes, and you went over a bunch of those benefits there. But I guess if I said to look at it holistically and say, what would you say the three biggest benefits you've seen after automating portions of this process at the Jacobson Group?
So I think the three biggest benefits that we've seen center around speed to submit, efficiency, and being able to spend more time on higher impact activities. With respect to speed to submit, as soon as a new job is released, we're able to start working on it. Also, because the process is less labor intensive, our team can handle a larger volume of work. We've been able to see our requisition volume grow month over month throughout this past year, and we've not really changed the size of the team too much. From an efficiency standpoint, we want to automate as many manual processes as we can, and that allows us to create cost savings so that we can pass some of those savings along to the customer. And then from the standpoint of spending more time on higher impact activities, I think this is sort of an interesting one, and it's definitely a softer cost savings than you might see from some of these other things. But by being able to increase the overall productivity for our recruiters by automating processes, increasing the training that they receive, our team's able to focus on things like strengthening relationships with candidates, being more engaged with candidates, finding out about hiring managers. What are they really looking for? Sometimes you get these job descriptions through the VMS tools that are 3 sentences long and don't really give you a whole lot of insight. But if you're thinking about it and you know the hiring manager, or you remember you worked with that hiring manager before, they can actually do that research to figure out what are they really looking for, which helps our overall success rate, because if you're submitting the candidates that the managers want to see, you have a higher rate of success in terms of getting placements within that program. And then finally, using that time to build relationships with the MSP program team members, because, you know, at the end of the day, everyone is being measured on something. And so if we can figure out how do we make the MSP teams look fantastic to their customers, then we're doing our job, and they're going to be, you know, willing to give us a heads up on a job order that's coming down the road pretty soon, or things like that, that I think over time really help increase our success.
Absolutely, and I feel like there was a portion there too where we were talking about, you know, one of the great stat lines I think you said in there is that you were able to work more requisitions with relatively the same headcount internally. Because we get the question a lot of what type of cost savings does this offer me? Can I, you know, and quite honestly, can I cut headcount from this? And I think the customers who have used this most successfully, like your team, have really used this as an opportunity, to your point, to scale the amount of work that each recruiter and account manager is responsible for, because so much of their day is spent in these processes that should be automated. On one of our presentations at Engage last year, we even talked about how somewhere in the neighborhood of 45% of a recruiter or an account manager's day in the VMS space specifically could be spent doing these manual activities. So by removing all of that from them, I think you illustrated perfectly that there's an opportunity for a lot more value add when they come into work every day. And so as you look at that then with your relationship to the MSP and how that relates, how would you say this new process has allowed you to create more of a true partnership with these MSP providers?
So I think, you know, we spent a lot of time this year analyzing our internal process, figuring out what takes up our time, what prevents us from getting candidates submitted in a timely manner, as well as the external partnerships that we have with MSPs. So we really try to understand what's important to whom. And, you know, that sounds really simple, but it takes a lot of time. You really have to think about it. You have to kind of have the free, like, headspace to be able to really get to that. Because I think, to your point, in terms of the administrative manual processes taking up nearly half of someone's day, those are the tasks that have to get done. And so to the extent that we can automate those tasks, then the team can spend time thinking about what they'd like to do and be more strategic. And I think everyone gets more fulfillment out of their job when they're doing that, as opposed to when they're doing, you know, data entry all day long. So I think that that's really, really key. So because our recruiters are able now to accomplish more in less time, they're able to spend more time thinking. And sometimes they're thinking about the hiring manager, sometimes they're thinking about the candidates, like, how do I engage with these candidates in a different way so that we have fewer people who don't finish an assignment as planned because they go get a full-time job or something. I think that there's so much that engagement plays with that. So if we're able to spend more time engaging with the candidates, that's going to really help us. And I mentioned too, like, thinking about what the hiring manager is looking for, figuring out how do we research a position at an organization. You know, sometimes we'll spend time looking to see if the employer has actually advertised that position as a full-time employee before, to see, well, what do they look for when they're looking for full-time people, so we can try and get a sense for maybe what would make more successful for a contingent worker. So it's all those little things that we're able to do that I think has really helped us partner more effectively, both with MSPs, with our customers, and with the candidates that we're placing on assignment.
Absolutely, and I feel like, you know, we can't say it enough there. There's that soft, you know, as you mentioned, a soft cost, a soft opportunity cost that's really this underlying thread of give your team more time to do what you actually hired them for, and you have these great results. And so speaking of not soft cost at this point, like when we look at the VMS space and the MSP relationship, there are, things put in place to help them quantify the successfulness of your relationship throughout the year, right? And so we have, MSPs having scorecards and SLAs that they hold their supplier base to. Can you walk us through a little bit more how this new process and this new way of thinking about that relationship reflects itself in those scorecards and SLAs for you?
Sure. So there's a couple metrics that I think there's a million metrics that we could be measured on in an MSP relationship, but there's a couple that we see consistently with all of our partnerships. One is time to submit. That's a very important metric to the MSP, to the customer, et cetera. Participation rate, which is considered what percent of the job orders that you receive do you respond to, and attrition. So what percent of the people placed on assignment complete that assignment as planned. And those three in particular, I think the automation that we've put in place this year has really helped us with. For instance, our time to submit has gone down across the board month over month as we've implemented new technologies. Some of it's just based on process changes that we've made that are somewhat unrelated to technology, but definitely like having Sync deployed for our team has been just really, really amazing in terms of the ability to submit more quickly. It's kept everything more orderly, and the team's able to submit to more jobs more quickly. In terms of participation rate, I mentioned earlier, month over month, the number of requisitions that the team's working on has increased, and we haven't really had to increase the size of the team. And so being able to handle more allows us to scale this team more effectively. And then finally, with respect to impacting attrition, I mentioned a little bit earlier, I think having that time to really be strategic around engaging with the people we have on assignment, making sure that we're answering their questions quickly, that we are proactively reaching out to them to see how their assignment is going. Those aren't really technological things at all, but because we've automated some of those tasks that were taking up our day, we're able to spend more time doing those things. And so we've seen the number of unplanned ends has decreased over time this year. So we're real proud of that one. I think that one probably is the most impactful to the client because, once you bring someone in, they start working. If they leave with 2 months to go in an assignment, that's just really disruptive to the business. So I think this is a really good outcome of some of the things we've done this year.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, not only to your point on the attrition, it's more of a domino effect that because all these other pieces are falling into place, it's allowing your team to spend more time with these candidate relationships, which is helping that attrition number decrease this year, which is amazing because that's not, I would assume, not just important to the relationship that you have on the scorecard, right, with the MSP, but to your point earlier, probably helps that MSP see you in a better light for future heads up on requisitions, probably gives you opportunities for MSPs winning new programs and seeing you as a valued partner. And then on top of that, we've heard, I think you even mentioned it here too, the candidate market right now in most professional space is negative unemployment, right? So the last thing that your team can afford is to have an assignment already signed and have a candidate not complete the full length of that assignment, because that's very hard to backfill candidates in this market. So I think perfectly stated there that all of these pieces, from the process changes to the technology, have brought that together to impact your SLAs and your scorecard overall. And looking at that success and all of these pieces and the processes being aligned, how does that relate to what your growth goals are for 2020?
So as we've discussed, this year was our proof of concept year at the Jacobson Group with respect to working in the MSP environment. And based on the results we've achieved, we're definitely looking to increase the size of this business unit several times during 2020, which is really exciting to us. And we really see this as a great opportunity for the business to grow not just next year, but year over year. There's just a lot of opportunity to add value in this space. Absolutely.
Yeah, I think that's with your growth goals in mind, it sounds like we have a great trajectory there, and obviously a great partnership with your team as well. So we're really excited to be part of that growth as it continues. And then as we look at, you touched a little bit there too, Beth, on the submittals functionality of the Sync tool. What benefits do you foresee specifically upcoming for that submittals functionality? Oh, sorry. Actually, let's kick that one to Jen.
Yeah, so I think, the benefits of the submittal functionality, as Beth mentioned before, and to echo that, is really the ability to meet those key SLAs, specifically time to submit. And, when you think about working in several or many different VMS systems, the submittals piece really streamlines that, takes out the guesswork of remembering those intricacies that apply to one VMS system versus the next. And, as Beth mentioned before, working completely within Bullhorn for that process allows new staff to ramp up quickly, allows us to plug and play existing staff to help out when there's an increase in volume. And I think in general, the sync functionality and having that in place addressed that initial pain point of getting the job recs into our system fast. The submittals piece supports our ability to continue to grow that business through end-to-end automation. And as Beth has said several times, that has allowed our staff to do those higher impact activities like the candidate and client relationship building. And we see that as a service differentiator for us.
Absolutely. I think, as we look at our partnership, and you stated it there too, that we started together with the VMS Sync tool and really kind of piloted that with your team as you piloted the overall thought of getting into more MSP and VMS requisitions. And then from that, you've built onto that with submittals. Would it be fair to say that there was a great impact from having the Sync portion of that underway and the processes around that underway before you started the submittal process?
Yeah, absolutely. I think, addressing the biggest pain point of getting the recs into the system fast allowed us to really take that time from data entry to think about, what's our next process efficiency, what's our next pain point and quick win that we can address. So as Beth has said several times, having that sync time away from doing the manual data entry.
Absolutely. Well, I think that's pivotal as you look at how that success has evolved for you guys throughout 2019. As this was a phased approach for not going completely in with the sync and submittal functionality all at the same time, having that process change first with sync, and now being able to see a new process and how that unfolds and how submittals complements that. And so when you look at your investment strategy with technology like the VMS Sync tool, we've talked an awful lot, Jen, about the importance of fully leveraging your entire tech stack, right, to maximize your ROI. Could you elaborate a little bit more on how you guys at the Jacobson Group make the most out of your technology? Maybe share some examples.
Sure, yeah. So first we looked at the process as a whole and we identified our biggest pain points. I think it was important for us to leverage our existing relationships within Bullhorn and the marketplace partners to look for quick and simple wins and big impacts to our business and those pain points. And I think a key to that was having senior leadership support for things like product trials of new tools. So we applied our existing ROI assessment process and designated staff to test and evaluate these tools. So I think even though it might have been a mini trial or a really brief time period, we viewed this as we need to do a full ROI assessment and testing as we do on an ongoing basis with our current tech stack. Second, we evaluated our Bullhorn workflow configuration to assess if we needed to make adjustments to better support this business. And one of the things that we did was actually adding a new order type to our job orders. And this allowed us to customize the job order fields and workflows to recognize the change in the process that's specific to servicing the VMS business. And I think we did a really great job of doing a holistic review of our entire tech stack and process automation opportunities. We uncovered new automation functionality in existing technology, which I think was really exciting, that allowed us to alleviate or eliminate some of those manual processes like job postings. And then we really view this is not one and done. We keep an open line of communication with the end users on this team, as well as all of our vendor partners, about the challenges and successes to see what creative solutions are available. And I think, we want our vendor partners to share in our wins as well. And also, telling them about, goodness, we still can't get past a particular pain point. Do you have any ideas? Has really allowed for us to have a blue sky approach with our partners.
Yeah, I think that's a great call out there is looking at your partners, not just your Bullhorn reps and obviously the team that stands behind your Bullhorn reps, but also your marketplace partners or Bullhorn's marketplace partners, and to come to them with an approach, as you're mentioning there, of not give me this piece of technology, but rather this is a overall business issue or business process problem that we're having. So we've identified the problem. What solutions do you know that are out there, or what have you seen in the market that can help with this? I think that's a great call out, is that not just at Bullhorn, but across the technology spectrum, if we all started looking at this as a partnership where we could really drive value to the end problem versus driving specifically it's this piece of technology, and hopefully you guys picked the right thing to answer the problem. That's great. Now I think that speaks really well to our overall partnership, and I really appreciate the time from the entire Jacobson Group to answer these rapid fire questions. Before we get to some of the questions that I've seen coming in, and Alex will run that for us, I will just say that if anybody else is interested in learning more about the VMS Sync tool here at Bullhorn, you can certainly contact your Bullhorn rep, or Alex has on this screen, you can go to bullhorn.com/VMS integration, or email sales@bullhorn.com. Looking forward to having a lot of in-depth conversations with the other teams that are on this call about their business challenges that relates to VMS as well. So with that, Alex, I'll let you take it away with the Q&A.
Awesome. Thanks, guys. And we do have some great questions coming in for the panelists, but we still have about 5 minutes or so. So if you have a question and you haven't been able to ask it, definitely put it in the question pane now. The first question we have is, what is the implementation for the Sync tool? What is that process like?
Yeah, this is Jen. I'll answer that one. So I would say in one word, it's seamless. My experience with implementing new technologies, I always know that there's going to be a lot of labor hours spent on our side with testing, user training, making sure that the end users are adopting the new technology. And with Sync specifically, those pieces of the implementation process were very light as far as participation from our internal users. I think the heavy lifting really came with us looking at our entire current state process and thinking about how the automation of the jobs coming in was really going to impact our process, and where do we need to be able to shift and flex to accommodate that automation, or those being able to work on those jobs quicker.
Awesome, great. And then the next question, I think this one is for Mark. Someone wants to know if you can use VMS Sync as a Bullhorn for Salesforce user.
Yeah, that is a great question. So VMS Sync does support Bullhorn for Force, our Connexus product internationally, Bullhorn, and our newly joined eRecruit team as well. So it is somewhat ATS agnostic, so I would definitely be happy to go a little bit more in depth to find out if the system that this person's working on now is compatible, but Bullhorn for Force does. We do work on that as well.
Great. This one is for the Jacobson Group. Someone wanted to know, what was the #1 factor in your decision to start automating the process and partnering with Bullhorn?
So we have been using Bullhorn ATS since 2008. And I think over, the last 11 years, we've seen that long-term commitment to evolving technology and functionality to meet client challenges and needs. So I think as we were looking at our relationship with Bullhorn, as I've said before, we view it as a partnership. Our business is the staffing business. When it comes to technology, we don't know what we don't know. And through frequent conversations with our rep about our pain points, she really helped us discover Bullhorn functionality solutions like VMS Sync and marketplace partners to creatively address those challenges. And so I think as we were piloting the VMS business, we felt like we had a trusted advisor in Bullhorn to really, try and sign up a couple of credentials and see how it worked.
Awesome, great. And then someone else wants to know, what did you wish you knew going into the process?
I guess I'll take that one. In terms of what we wish we knew, I mean, I think probably the, I don't even know, Jen, do you?
I think we approached it very similarly to any new tech implementation. We were expecting that we would have a lot of labor hours internally. We'd have a really formalized project plan that would span many weeks. And I think we were surprised at the level or the lack of heavy lifting that we had to do internally from a project team standpoint, because really it was making sure that all of the coding and the field mappings were done correctly. And then again, how can we service the business faster once these jobs get in here?
Great.
I think one thing, can I just add one thing to that real quickly? Sorry.
Sure.
I think there was, with any technology implementation, you always have some hesitation around whether your users are going to adopt it. And so I think that we had that hesitation going into this implementation, yet what we didn't really realize was that because the job orders were going to be pulled straight into Bullhorn, no process was really changing. We didn't have a lot of change management to do. We didn't have a lot of user adoption issues to address with this technology, which was really nice. So it's not necessarily something that I wish I knew. It's something that I was pleasantly surprised to find out.
Awesome. And then looks like we have time for one or two more here. Someone just wants to know if you're marketing that you have this differentiated process with MSPs, and if so, how are you marketing it? Are you putting on your website, one-pagers, or if not, dealing with word of mouth? Just want to know if you're getting the word out and how.
We definitely are working on marketing what we're doing, because this has been a pilot this year, so it's been a great success. But we're working on how to operationalize it more fully within the business.
Awesome. There's actually a bunch more questions coming in, but it looks like we're just about at time here. So we will actually send out the recording via email to all attendees. And if you asked a question here that we didn't get to, we'll make sure it gets answered. And with that, I'd like to thank today's panelists. Thank you, Mark. Great webinar, and hope everyone has a great rest of their day.
Thanks, everybody. Have a good one.